The U.S. Supreme Court declining to block a new Texas abortion law, which bans nearly all abortions once a fetal heartbeat can be detected, often at 6 weeks of pregnancy. Our panelists return now to react: Jennifer Kerns, Jack Kingston, and Jenna Ellis. It was a 5-4 vote. The justices denied an emergency request by abortion and women's health providers for an injunction on enforcement of the ban, which took effect early Wednesday while this litigation continues. So, Jenna, I'll go straight to you. How are you reading into this ruling and what it means for future access to abortion nationwide?
Well, I am so grateful for President Trump because without his 3 Supreme Court justice appointees, we would not have this decision. And so you see that it really should have been 9-0. This was an emergency injunction. It was the left asking for a knee-jerk reaction to say, oh, of course, we're going to stop a legitimate law that Texas clearly has the constitutional authority to implement. And the Democrats are shocked that somehow that's now not happening from the Supreme Court. So I think it's great not only for conservatives, it's great for the pro-life movement, but it's also great for the U.S. Constitution. This is clearly a state issue, and the Supreme Court was absolutely right to deny that injunction, but it should have been a 9-0 opinion. This shouldn't have any political bias standing in the way. And I am hopeful that as cases continue to progress to the Supreme Court, that we will have these types of holdings and the protections of life, because the reality is that there is no constitutionally protected right for an abortion. The Supreme Court has never stood for that proposition, even in Roe versus Wade, Planned Parenthood versus Casey. It's the undue burden test. The Supreme Court has found that the government does have a compelling interest to protect life. And as we continue to make medical advances, we see that there is a fetal heartbeat as early as 5 or 6 weeks. We know that human life begins at conception and must be protected from conception all the way to natural death.
Okay, you mentioned a few things in there, one of them being Roe versus Wade. Other legal analysts weighing in, saying the court's action over the Texas ban could perhaps foreshadow its approach in another case over a 15-week ban coming out of Mississippi, in which the state has asked the justices to overturn Roe v. Wade. Jennifer Kerns, your thoughts on, again, what we've seen from this Texas law coming into play and the Supreme Court reaction?
Well, I think both cases actually show a turning in the public opinion in the United States of America, and that is towards a more pro-life stance. And this is why Planned Parenthood is starting to hit the panic button, and this is why you'll start to see them really talk about this issue ahead of the 2022 midterms. There's some interesting polling. There was a Marist poll, no conservative poll there. A Marist poll showed that support for pro-life issues had actually risen about 17% among the American people in the last 2 years. We now know also that about 2/3 of millennials and Gen Z actually are anti-abortion. They are very pro-life, much more so than my generation was. And we also see, I think, what is probably most the alarming number for Democrats here is that now over 34% of Democrats now consider themselves anti-abortion and pro-life. What you'll see the Democrats trying to push in the 2022 midterms is this is some war on women. But what we really know is the real war on women happened over the last 18 months with the COVID-19 pandemic, with the lockout of jobs and small businesses and restaurant owners, almost half of which are American women who had to flee the workforce at the hands of those big blue state governors and the big blue city mayors.
Again, that would have to acknowledge that women can get pregnant, a fact that we know to be biologically true. Dick Morris has a piece out on Newsmax.com. He warns about how this ruling could fuel the opposite side, Jack Kingston, because it is a political issue, the pro-life versus pro-choice. Politicians tend to stick to one side or the other here. How do you think this could impact calls for court packing, as we've heard in the past, or even those midterm elections?
Well, the Democrats have always been very smart to focus on court and court cases. In this case, we see once again John Roberts siding with the wrong side and him being what often happens to a Republican appointee. They get on the court and they get thoughtful, and then they start voting with the left, and you wonder why you wasted the nominee on somebody who's so squishy. Democrats, on the other hand, when they're appointed to the court, they become activists. In fact, most of them already are activists. they just continue it at a higher level. But since 1973, people don't realize in America 60 million abortions have taken place, actually over that number. But the CDC would agree that it's been at least 60 million people. That's larger than any state in the country. And prior to then, it wasn't like the Supreme Court was missing it, that in suddenly in 1973 with Roe v. Wade, they became enlightened with new knowledge. This was just a political decision of the day, and there is no constitutional basis. In 1989, there were a couple of cases, Casey versus Pennsylvania, Missouri Health Services, that started to say states could get back into the abortion regulatory game. And that's where the right has been winning these cases, and that's where we have to continue to. As respects my friend Dick Morris, I'd say the left is already ginned up about abortion. The right needs to answer them and stay active and stay on the offense.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Jennifer Kerns, Jack Kingston, Jenna Ellis. Hi, Emma Reckenberg here. If you like this video, there's a whole lot more to see on Newsmax TV. You can watch for free right here on our YouTube live stream and be the first one here each time our experts break down real news. Just hit that subscribe button, ring the bell icon, and stay with us on America's fastest growing cable news channel, Newsmax TV.